Welcome to part 4 of our parent education series on substance abuse. This is the final part of our series. So we're going to be talking about withdrawal symptoms, relapse, and family involvement. I'm a social worker with the Pleasanton Unified School District, and we just wanted to remind you that all the info that is compiled in this series is from a variety of resources, and it'll all be listed in the resources box that can be found on the hyperdoc that led you to this video. So we'll start by talking about withdrawal symptoms. So withdrawal occurs because your brain actually works like a spring when it comes to addiction. So drugs and alcohol are brain depressants that push down that spring, and they suppress your brain's production of neurotransmitters. So when you stop using drugs or alcohol, it's like you're taking the weight off of that spring, and your brain actually rebounds by producing a surge of adrenaline that causes withdrawal symptoms. So every drug is different. There's some drugs that are going to produce a significant physical withdrawal, so alcohol, opiates, tranquilizers, and some drugs produce little physical withdrawal, but it's more emotional, so like cocaine, marijuana, ecstasy. But every person's physical withdrawal pattern is also different. So you might experience little physical withdrawal while someone else experiences a lot. But that does not mean that you're not addicted. It's that it means that you might just experience more emotional withdrawal. So we'll start by looking at what emotional withdrawal can look like. A lot of times we see things like anxiety, restlessness, irritability, insomnia, poor concentration, depression, or social isolation. So like we talked about in the last part of this series, a lot of times people try to self-medicate for depression with marijuana, but actually the result is that the marijuana actually causes you to become more depressed. Some physical symptoms include headaches, sweating, racing heart, palpitations, muscle tension, tightness in the chest, difficulty breathing, tremors, nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea. And then there's more life-threatening symptoms. So suddenly stopping alcohol or tranquilizers can actually lead to these things. So grand mal seizures, heart attacks, strokes, hallucinations, or delirium tremens. So a medically supervised detox can minimize your withdrawal symptoms and actually reduce the risk of dangerous complications. And the first stage of withdrawal is called the acute stage. This usually lasts the first few days to weeks, and then the second stage of withdrawal is post-acute, and this can last for much longer than that. Relapse is an important thing for us to cover because it is a normal part of anyone's recovery. Recovery is an ongoing process. And so relapse doesn't necessarily mean that the individual is back to the beginning of recovery, because plenty of progress can be made in the process. As parents, there's a couple ways you can support your student during relapse. One would be just helping them be aware of their triggers. If they know their triggers and you know their triggers, you can work together a lot to try to prevent or minimize those triggers. And then also making personal changes. So if you know that a trigger for your student is seeing alcohol, maybe not having wine with your dinner is a sacrifice that you can make for your child in order to prevent relapse. We want to end this series by really just emphasizing the importance of family involvement. We know that recovery is intimately tied with family, and so you guys play a huge role in your students' recovery. We also know that recovery for yourself is really imperative. So even if you're not addicted, it's going to be important for you to be open to change and open to removing some substances from your house if it's something that could trigger your kid. And so being receptive to change, whether that's going to family counseling altogether, or making some other changes that maybe your drug and alcohol counselor recommends. And then refraining from enabling. I know we talked about in the last portion of our series, in part 3, we talked about what enabling is. And so really just guarding yourself against enabling. So we want to encourage you that as parents, you can have a very active role in your students' recovery, and you can be a huge advocate for them and a huge support system for them. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you found this to be helpful.